Well, hello. Today is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024. This is Workgroup-Serving weekly meeting. Welcome, everybody. We start with reviewing to-do from past week. I think, Eduardo, you followed up on this, right? Eduardo, can you hear me?
Yes, but very like I heard the Eduardo, but not the rest. But
Sorry, is
I
my
can
mic?
I can hear you clearly, so it might be network
yeah.
on your side, Eduardo.
Okay.
hmm
So yeah, I was talking about to-do from past week, and this is the first item on agenda.
Oh yeah. So on the last week we as a whole decided to have a repo where we can start having like a templates and the community can start contributing kind of like a customized. So we will have like customized examples of how people are deploying their workloads. I submitted the request. I pinged a member of the organization. I've been bugging them on chat, still hoping to get that accepted so we can start working on the repository. So hopefully by the next week we will have that in.
Okay, perfect. Next is workstream updates and auto scaling. Ray, do you want to speak about it or Clayton? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I can quickly jump in. So we scheduled a meeting for tomorrow. We'll pick things up again. A couple of topics. We can review some of the stuff Jackson had in his doc. Also, one topic from last time was around benchmarking that we didn't quite finish. So it'd be great to kick that off again and see where we can take it. So yeah, look forward to seeing folks there tomorrow.
yeah, and I want to note it's a different times than it was used to be in the past. I really appreciate it because I can attend it. But yeah, I think more people can attend and maybe different set of people this time. Next topic is DRA. For DRA, we actually merged many PRs. Like DRA was merged. Device failure in pod status was merged, and I mean OCI is not directly DRA related, but it's still in the same realm. So OCI volume source was also merged. So all cabs that we were tracking as work for this working group was actually merged successfully. So let's see how they perform in their corresponding stages. I think they're all in alpha still. So let's see how it performs and whether we will have some validation on them. So I understand, John, that there will be some work on example DRA plugin.
Yes. So Kevin already has, I think, an example, the example plugin updated for the 131 code. It's in ksig, so it's not subject to the code freeze. But the one point I wanted to make on not only did the main PR merge, which is great, but the quota PR merge. So that was one of the items that we thought was a little bit of a risk to go to betas if we didn't have any quota story in alpha. Now it looks like we will have that. So we think we have everything we need to go to beta that for 132. There's another addition we probably want to add in 132, which is a admission plugin instead of using validating admission policy for one particular feature. But nothing, regardless, I'm feeling pretty good about assuming it works the way we want and people are happy with it. We have a real shot at beta next release, which would be fantastic. What I would like to ask from this group is over the next month or ish, or probably a little more than that, as we move toward enhancements freeze for 132, is I'd love to get into alpha some functionality to support some of the multi-host work. If there's some requirements we need from if you have requirements for DRA. So that's something, yeah, I'd like to make sure that we stay engaged so that we can get that planned out for the 132 cap freeze. Did you have a question for me though that I forgot to answer, or did I cover everything?
No, you covered
Okay.
everything. I mostly was talking about validation and example plugin. So
Oh yes, yeah, we're gonna get that, and we also are. So I started in our call. I recruited a handful of people to start to work on not only the example driver, but a Google NIC driver, a Google TPU driver. NVIDIA, of course, is planning to do their driver. I think somebody wants to do DPU NIC driver. So there's a bunch of drivers, and we'll manage that through our working group to try and get those delivered. They all can come out of tree, so they can all come kind of over time. But yeah, I'm excited to see that and be able to try it out in different environments.
go ahead and go with your hand.
I was so just thinking kind of as you were describing, John, we talked about last time we talked about getting the repo so that we could, start pulling together what we consider like our canonical examples of serving in these different configurations, a little bit like what DRA has done with the, go to a directory, write the YAML, show how it works. It's not something that's intended necessarily to be immediately used, although there is value in some of that for like test cases. I think we kind of mentioned this last time. I think we should try to intersect DRA being an alpha with some examples that are coming from this group of using those. And maybe we can take a little, ownership's not the right word, but it's not the right word for DRA either. We can take on a little bit more of having some examples, how you run models, large models, very, very complicated, how you would use DRA for these examples, and then kind of shift that responsibility from the DRA group having to own those to the serving group saying, like, here's what we kind of expect to work. Look at these, because we're also bringing the domain expertise on
Exactly. Yeah.
That feedback loop. So we kind of talked about that last time. I actually wanted to say that would be a really good deliverable for us for next release, to have that set of examples, both that are usable, but that also complement what DRA has started, and then we take ownership of that, of driving that. Great examples to use DRA for serving, so that we can also take feedback on why it's terrible, but then we feed back into DRA.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Moving on. Orchestration, Johan.
Yeah, so for orchestration, last time we talked about like schedule a meeting around blueprint, but after some side discussions, I think the blueprint proposal got deprioritized, and we should probably focus on the catalog that Clayton and Jason's team may be ready to propose. I don't know if Clayton, do you think it's ready for review?
So Jason, I don't know if Jason's here.
Yep, I'm here.
Jason, you're here?
Yeah, I think Abdullah made the doc public in the last one. We have that repo coming up, and then I can post more details about the current approach, and we can start a discussion from there.
Okay.
And Justin, I know you were prototyping some of I know you were taking a look at like multi-host Llama, and there was one or two other folks. I don't know if Rupeng's on the call. Yeah, Rupeng's here. I know we were trying to, we wanted to bring that intersection of like LWS, Llama 3, 400 billion into the example space. So I don't know if there's any specific update on that from Justin, you or Rupeng.
Yeah, I think we did a prototype with multiple GPU node, but we didn't. I haven't tried the Llama 3 400 billion model. That one specifically. So I'm still. I didn't have a lecture point to try. I will try that once I verify that. I will update. But we did try with like other model from Facebook with multiple GPU A3 node on AWS. That one works good with TCPX, which enable high, using NCSL for high throughput network bandwidth. So yeah, I will update later.
Okay, and Justin, did you have anything distinct to share there?
Yeah, I'm continuing on the. We got the PR. Thank you for the review and merging it. We got the PR merge as an example in leader worker set. It is actually on the CPU right now. that's merged. But I am messing around with GPUs, and it's a fairly small model. But it is distributed across multiple nodes, and I am working on bigger models that actually need multiple nodes, and on GPU support. And GPU support I got working last night, and I am downloading larger models.
Okay, so maybe that would be good input for the next orchestration. But I think just if folks are interested in participating in this, if we want to use the, like, Jan, if we want to use the orchestration work stream to kind of like do this, it makes sense to me at least, and it makes sense to you.
Okay. Yeah, just let me know if they are ready to be presented and discussed with the work stream. Also, I think the gateway is probably a good fit within that work stream as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the framing that I would use is all the gateway use cases are about ensuring multiple serving workloads are orchestrated well on Kubernetes. So yeah, I think gateway naturally fits into orchestration as well. And Dan's previous, did we talk about that in orchestration, or we talk about in the overall group?
Up to you. I think we can talk about it here because we have a broader audience.
Okay, and I added a topic. I was going to specifically, once we get through the work streams, I was going to specifically kind of share the diagram of, I had promised to kind of take the alternate position to like the kind of the high level gateway on something that's much more focused on like orchestration. But so I was going to share a diagram. I'm not ready with a full doc yet, so we can talk about that then. And I think, yeah, the decision that gateway is under orchestration is reasonable.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's it for orchestration.
Yeah, we had a discussion with like Envoy gateway community, so we're going to start that work stream pretty soon. Maybe like getting to the Envoy gateway like a future release.
And Dan, can you link that in? I know that there's some folks looking at the Envoy stuff from the Google side. They may not. I think they might be connected, but if they're not, I definitely want to make sure that they're connected because they're looking at making investments here too.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely would like to get connected. I don't think I'm connected with anyone from Google.
Okay, great.
So there is a comment in the chat from Jeff. Jeff, I don't think we met. Do you want to expand a little bit on what exactly for multi-node is interesting for you?
I just heard mention of multi-node, and I'm Jeff Nappy, by the way, at OctoAI. We do distributed optimized inference, so something this is of interest to me. We, of course, with the larger models coming around, multi-node is starting to be a thing that everybody is looking at. And I saw that you also had posted this Llama CPP example of multi-node there, but we have our own inference serving solution that doesn't use Llama CPP. So also interested in some of those things. And I know I haven't looked at Llama CPP, but I'm guessing it's pipeline parallelism or something along those lines.
Yeah, it is. And it's just a very basic example, like just sort of starting to, the goal, I think, and like, I think putting into leader worker set is to, understand like what we need to do in leader worker set to support this, right? So like, hopefully if you use leader worker set for your probably much better model or much better, like, serving infrastructure, then like that will benefit you also.
I see also the value I'm getting out of just this thing is leader worker set is new to me, like just at this moment. so that's good for us to take a look at. And if somebody could provide if there's a link to about leader worker set, I'd love to read that and look forward to joining future calls here as well.
Yeah, during one of the calls we had a demo of LWS. You may find it among the recordings, maybe in different workstream documents though. So yeah, if you just doing a little bit separate, if you wouldn't find it, you can ping me. And yeah, we're really interested in feedback from people actually coding and like doing it. So please don't hesitate to ask and send feedback. I see Did Ryan, you unmuted yourself? Do you want to speak or just, well, maybe it's a Zoom visualization. Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just sent Jeff a link on the later worker set recordings. I think last month. For the multi-host workstream meetings, according to the feedbacks last week, we will schedule a discussion meeting next Monday, and I drafted like a doc as the starting point for the discussion. It talks more on the network requirements for the distributed and the disaggregate inference, which means the across node communications. Yeah, feel free to take a look, and yeah, it's better for other people to add more topics on the multi-host related issues, so we can have a discussion in that meeting. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I haven't sent out the meeting invitation, so I will do it after this meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Clayton, you have a next open topic.
All right. Yeah, I need to be able to present.
You can do it now.
All right. Chrome tab. Okay. So just for context, when Dan shared his LLM gateway, I think I've been exploring this for a while. Like, there's a bunch of use cases for gateway needs. The framing that I was actually starting with was, and apologies to Dan if I misrepresent. There's a number of LLM use cases that are LLM gateway use cases, as he described, and as other ecosystem projects have chosen, that are what I would call high-level LLM routing, where their goal is to direct an LLM request to an appropriate LLM service. And a lot of the features there are being kind of implemented in what we would have called API gateways, high-level transform of incoming, L7 request with some additional semantics, not just routing anything that's HTTP, but if you set up an API gateway because you're running lots and lots of APIs. And so for LLM use cases, there's similar things. You want to multiplex between different service providers because of cost or reliability. You want to apply LLM specific domain logic to transform the request. What I was focused on, actually, I think, was lower in the stack. And I apologize, my room is about to drive right by me, so it's going to get really loud here. The LLM stack, I have this diagram. I've been focused on what I would call, can everybody see this?
Yep.
We good? Okay. So what I think, Dan, and correct me if you disagree, what Dan was focusing on was the LLM gateway. What I was observing was, I think if LLMs are going to be fundamental to a large class of the workload that runs on Kubernetes, to basically be the equivalent, LLMs and things like them, let's say, that will be the equivalent of running microservices on Kubernetes. There's a set of there's a set of use cases that are about lower level. How would you actually ensure that the same benefits that Kubernetes offers for microservices, where you can run multiple workloads on a shared set of CPUs on a shared node and bring requests to those nodes? If LLM serving is going to be consuming, at least economically, a high percentage of the cost of serving for a large number of workloads going forward, the hypothesis that people are actually going to use open self-hosted models, which we've seen a lot of support for, then there's a missing ingredient or an opportunity for us to add support, not just at that high level, that API gateway, the LLM gateway use case, but actually something much closer that sits a little bit like kube services and maybe a slight analog to kube ingress and the HTTP route API that directs traffic to pools of model servers and multiplexes use cases onto those model servers. So the features and use cases are actually really similar. I think the goals are different. So Rob Scott had a really great summarization. He called the high level LLM routing, and we were kind of tentatively calling the lower level LLM scheduling, which is how do you have an objective for a bunch of different use cases that can actually share pools of model servers. And that requires you to look at the requests and make decisions about them. So we're working on some of like the exploration and experimentation. It's not quite ready yet. I've been talking to a few people in the community and sharing some of this like thought process and use case. But at the high level, the way that model servers are likely to continue for the largest models is that you just can't share them with anything except for multiplexing multiple requests with different system prompts, or using different LoRa adapters, which people, if you've seen LoRax or if you've seen some of the other LoRa support out there, a LoRa adapter is a fine tune that's small enough that you can have a couple of them at the same time. The Punica S LoRa paper showed how you could run them in the same batch. So I'm drawing the analog here actually between multiple use cases using the same model server for LoRa adapters or prompts. Need fairness, they need prioritization, they need routing, but there's also some performance opportunities, which is you can send short requests to servers that have cheaper accelerators. You can manage the amount of traffic going to different backends to achieve different latency objectives. And the premise here is that people are going to be self-hosting LLMs. Occasionally, those self-hosted LLMs are going to completely fail, or you're going to want to direct traffic. And so there's actually value in having some of those high-level LLM gateway routing use cases, like directing to different services, where if you get an excess set of traffic or if all of your backends go down, failing over to either inference as a service or to other places that you've hosted. Those are very similar to existing kube patterns with services, with multi-cluster services. And so I think the distinction that I'm trying to draw is I think there's actually room for two types of gateway. And I think there's a lot of desire to share some of the same implementation. But a little bit of my focus is down at that lower level. I call it LLM instance gateway. We could call it LLM scheduling. I think naming is still pretty early.
Yeah. I think I agree. My proposal was mainly targeting for the use case, for routing between different ARM providers. So this is more a little lower level to a given provider, and you want to optimize it's actually very similar to the case of model mesh idea, where you have a pool of
Yes.
model servers, and then it's more act as a scheduler where you can optimize where you schedule the model a LoRa adapters. So you can route to depending on which GPU type you want to schedule to.
And I think ideally it's very complementary to model mesh, or we could find ways of sharing implementation. I haven't had that discussion yet. I think that's something I'd love to chat about with you and others on the K-serve side. As I mentioned in a couple other contexts, we have a lot of users who want kind of a unidimensional, where they're going to have a massive inference LLM serving workload, but they're not going to have as much traditional MLOps, so that's a completely separate team. And so I'd love to find a way to support the use cases, to benefit from work that's already been done, but also to ensure that, where possible, we're finding those common elements and supporting them in projects that then can be consumed by higher levels. So I'd love to have a follow-up discussion on that. I was just trying to show the diagram because I'm not quite at the point where we've got, the full details, but that's good to hear at least that you see that, that analog.
Yep.
And obviously, I guess one other note I would add, the LoRa stuff is still relatively new. We know of a few people who are aggressively using LoRa. I've had a few discussions with different folks who are very interested in it. I think the broader use case, the vast majority of people are actually perfectly fine just using an unmodified smart base model. As you go smaller, you tend to fine tune, you tend to refine it for a very specific use case, and it loses some of that generality. But like, there's kind of that duality in our industry right now. The very large models are general purpose, and you can get started. Like, a startup doesn't need to do anything except use the big model to get their first proof of concept. As you start trying to capture efficiency, you start asking that question. I'm going to drop to a smaller model. I'm going to tune it. I'm going to very specifically, control the variables so that I get a good quality outcome. That journey, I think we also want to make sure there's good solutions for it in multiple spots. But, with the advent today or yesterday of a very large model that could be general purpose for self-hosting, that, in some dimensions hits that quality threshold of being general purpose, there's also room, I think, for sharing those very large servers efficiently across multiple use cases. If someone wants to use that model and you want to share it, just system prompting isn't enough. You need to think about fairness and a bunch of traffic related guidance. And so there's a kind of a new use case opening up. We originally started this kind of on the dense LoRa side. There's a new use case, which would just be big models, but you want to make sure that the different consumers of that model get equal fairness. And so some of that, it's going to be higher level than L7. And you can certainly build that today with an L7 gateway with existing load balancing tech. I think there's an opportunity, as I said, for Kubernetes to help to find and nurture those standard components, because that'll enable operational teams to just quickly ramp up. And we want some of that flexibility that exists in gateway, where there can be different implementations, where gateway providers. And so I think the natural focus of this is a little bit more gateway than Kubernetes. But the connection I at least wanted to draw for this audience was, I do think it's really important that Kubernetes be able to offer the same benefit for very large model serving that it did for CPU. And we can't, it's kind of the inverse problem. We can't share microservice or multiple model use cases on the same accelerator for the largest models today, but we can multiplex them onto the models. And so I want to at least explore that with folks in the ecosystem. So I'm looking for interest. I'm looking for people who have experience in this area who want to provide feedback. Dan, I very much want to chat with you. If there's others, I think Jeff, you mentioned LoRa and custom checkpoints. I know of a lot of people doing it. What I don't see is that center of gravity of practitioners who are able to share knowledge and build common infrastructure. That's what I would like us to be able to offer, as a place for multiple groups using LoRa density, or who have the concern of running multiple use cases, want fast reconfiguration. Those are all things I'd love to get something close to working group serving, partnering with Kserve and working with the model servers and others in the ecosystem who have experience to put those best practices into code.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Clayton, there's interest on our side, or certainly for me, and there's others for my team actually on the call as well. The other thing that comes to mind for me is sort of, and you'll probably discuss some of this, but moving the bits around. Like, how are we? What sort of shared infrastructure do we have, our features in Kubernetes do we have for dealing with multi-hundreds of gigs of weights data, and efficiently getting that to the machines and loading that into the GPUs as well. There are NVIDIA specific features, or hardware provider specific features for direct DMA access for moving data in and out of the GPUs, and leveraging those things in a sort of more something at a level away from the providers or from the folks, and having some shared sort of infrastructure for that would be really powerful. And I don't think any of us imagined having like 15 gig Docker images when any of this stuff was built. And there's a number of problems with the OCI spec that folks try to work around. I mean, for example, one of the things is I think a single-threaded gzip compression being like a commonly used aspect of Docker, and then as well like when you're pushing images, I think the spec requires the sequential pushing of chunks rather than the parallel pushing of chunks. So there's like some pieces there around making those pieces better for this use case that would be
And
valuable.
that specifically, absolutely. So I brought that up in the serving Slack channel the other day. I think we should have a discussion about model caching and model loading as its own entity. We've kind of discussed it, or I think maybe we talked about it in autoscaling, sorry. We talked about it in autoscaling as an ingredient, but I think I've seen other people who I think there's a couple of folks looking at various different ways of bringing all this together. I think that would be a very useful topic, probably in the autoscaling. Ray, do you agree? Just because that's where it started, or do we want to do it in orchestration?
That's an interesting question. Like, we did talk about it quite a bit because it affects that startup portion, right, of autoscaling. So, yeah, I mean, we're happy to. Go ahead.
There's a lot of topics in orchestration, so yeah, why don't we do that in the autoscaling stream? Even though it is something, we're talking about a solution. The problem is speeding up startup. And auto scaling is critically dependent. Any kind of scaling is critically dependent on startup. Mm-hmm. So we'll tee that up as a topic. I don't know that we'll get to it tomorrow, but maybe I would suggest folks who are interested in this, we'll tee that up for the next meeting. And if you have model caching infrastructure you'd like to share, I know Gajin's talked about theirs. Eduardo, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to talk about. I know we've had some discussions offline. Anybody who would like to discuss kind of the broad model caching, model loading, we'll tee that up for the next autoscaling.
So there's a separate meeting scheduled for autoscaling. Is that one that I can?
Yeah, we do this one as like the kind of the aggregator, and then because there's so many deep topics that people love, we've kind of been having separate work streams. Autoscaling is one of the work streams, and we'll talk about.
Yeah,
awesome.
We're already.
Yeah, I'd like to join that one for sure.
We had a full a model caching proposal presented into the K-serve community. So we'd like to share on the autoscaling working group as well.
All right, I'll jot that down in the notes. Any other comments on my thread? I think we're at the point of I'm looking for interest. I'm not quite ready to give like a deeper doc. Like I've been working on that, and we've been having some experimentation. So we'd still like to get something shared soon. But if there's others who are working on the LLM gateway side, I at least want to get it out there that there may be some other use cases. And I got to follow up to chat with Dan, I think, on model mesh. And if there's anyone else, just register your interest or let me know directly.
Thank you, Clayton. With that, we reach the end of our agenda. Is there anybody else who wants to speak up? Any other topic? If not, then we get 20 minutes back, and tomorrow is autoscaling workgroup meeting, same time. If you're interested, please join. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah.